Welcome, everyone. Today's LinkedIn Live. I'm Bruce Heckfeldt. I'm your host and moderator today. I'm going to introduce our guests in a second. For our audience, our today's topic is harnessing emotional energy, the secret weapon of great leaders. Excited for this one. There was a lot of great conversation we've already had in prepping for this. Really looking forward to it. I think some interesting, not only kind of insights, but really help that I think we can give leaders around how to really kind of round themselves out and really how to make impact and how to connect with people, which I think is going to be super important in today's world of leadership. If you are a guest on the program today, or if you're an audience member watching us live, there is the box on LinkedIn. We will be watching that. If you have a comment or question, go ahead and throw it in there. We'll try to catch those as we go. We're also streaming live on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, jump over to LinkedIn. I'm not going to be watching the YouTube comments. So if you want to leave a comment or you want to leave a live comment, go ahead and put it over on LinkedIn. If you're watching the replay, either on LinkedIn or on YouTube, feel free to leave comments and questions there. We'll be watching those channels in the coming days and weeks. We're happy to respond to things there. So even if you're watching the replay, throw some comments and questions in there. So with that, let me introduce our guests. First up, I've got Lindsay Dowd. She is a dynamic executive coach. She's also founder of Heartbeat for Hire. She helps companies transform toxic cultures by guiding leaders to adopt authentic communication, empathy, emotional intelligence, some of our key topics today, and really make them a cornerstone of their lifestyles. So with that, Lindsay, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Bruce. We've been waiting for this.
Yeah, I know. We've been doing this for a while. We've been waiting for this one. Next up, I've got Richard Bracken. He is an emotional intelligence expert. He's also a keynote speaker. He's an executive coach and focuses on data-driven insights and creative tools like music and storytelling to really help leaders enhance their self-awareness, foster meaningful connections in the workplace. With that, Rich, welcome to the program.
Bruce, thanks for having me. It's the best early birthday present I've ever gotten. So I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
So let's kind of dig into this, or let's start out with just a general question: is why do each of you feel like emotional intelligence is kind of so needed, and where do you think the big challenge is right now for leaders around emotional intelligence? Lindsay, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, when I think of leadership in like the big corporate perspective, which is really where I came from, we were kind of brought up in this, forgive this, pale, male, and stale kind of very, masculine, intense environment.
Yep.
And there wasn't a lot of time for expression or sharing feelings or really authenticity. You were really meant to keep your personal and your private, your personal and your corporate or your professional separate. And there's been a real shift over the last few years that people are tired of that and they want more from their leaders. And, gone are the days where you're guaranteed a really safe corporate environment. And by safe, I just mean like safe to ask questions, safe to, share ideas, safe to come up with new concepts. And that's what people are hungry for. And there's this really nice volume that's getting turned up on this. I want leaders who are real. I want leaders who are willing to share, who are humble, who are okay to share their mistakes. And that's the kind of authenticity that I always admired and from the leaders that I had, but it's also the way that I led. And for so many years, all I had was these, male, very pro sports, very like pound on your chest, very like, this is the way we do it. Let's go crush our numbers. And inspiration came from last night's football game. And if you wouldn't watch that, you were like, shit out of luck. Like that was too bad. Yeah. So we need to do better. And that no longer inspires people. So when I had the first leader that actually said, like, how do you want to run the business? And I'm like, what? You want to know? And sharing stories of, I used to really suck at this, but I learned and I got a mentor and they helped me. And when you hear those moments of growth, there's hope for you. And that's what inspires people. So I really do feel like there's a shift, there's a demand, there's a need. And I know Rich, he experiences the same thing. And that's why we both get hired, because there is a need for this change in dialogue, change of behavior. And I'm totally here for it.
Definitely a hunger. Rich, let me get your take on this. When you think about, bringing this into the workplace, what does it mean for you and why is it important?
Number one, I'll say that I'm a living, breathing evidence that emotional intelligence works. It not only changed my life, but it frankly saved my life.
Yeah.
I found out about it through an unfortunate trip to the ER because I was like every other person in corporate America, chasing the numbers, chasing the status, chasing the busyness, chasing the full schedule, and I wasn't taking care of myself. And I think so many times, like Lindsay said, we're so amped to go chase those things. We're chasing the success metrics. We're chasing all these things that we forget that there's this underlying need for us to tune into not only ourselves, but other people too. And I feel like even though we've become more connected technologically or technically, that we've become more distant as well. Yeah. So we're not communicating on an empathetic level as we should. We're not listening like we should. We're not good active listeners like we should be doing. Mm-hmm. And so most of the times we're trying to get to the next thing. And so every time I talk with an organization, I bring up data because I work with the #1 emotional intelligence company in the world, Talent Smart EQ. We've got data galore on how this helps people. And I'm so tired of hearing people call it a soft skill. Because when you think like I'm literally on a mission to get rid of the term soft skill.
I have a term, Rich. It's power skills.
It's power skill. It's a critical skill. I keep calling it a critical skill because it is absolutely critical to the success of individuals, teams, and organizations. When 60% of your performance as an individual has to do with your emotional intelligence, not your skills, not your knowledge, not your degrees, nothing of the sort. Your emotional intelligence has to do with 60% of your performance. So if you have somebody who's very smart, who can't listen, who isn't empathetic, who can't be open to new ideas, who can't be adaptable to success, you're going to miss the mark on your success all day long, and you're going to burn your people out in the process.
Yeah. I'm curious what this work actually looks like for each of you, because I think a lot of people think about, we're going to do emotional intelligence. We're all going to cry in meetings or something like that, right? Like it becomes this like about emotions or about like being more like vulnerable or like what when we actually talk about developing emotional intelligence as individuals and as organizations, what does this really entail? I'd love to kind of get some.
I mean, the way Rich does it is way more fun than the way I do it, and it's just by nature who he is, and he can tell you all about that. But for me, I will get a call from a leader who will be like, okay, I don't feel like I'm connecting with my people. How can I improve on this? And this is not a keynote. This is like, I want to work with you one-on-one. And they have all the tools. They just don't know how to use it. And they don't know how to let their voice be heard. And I hear this a lot from new leaders, that leaders that's their first C-suite role. They really want to do it right. They want to make sure they're leaving the right impression. They might be coming in after someone who was great or someone who was terrible, and they have to clean up. And those people, as soon as you can say, hey, you already did it. I saw you do it over here. You just need to do more of it. They're like, really? That's it? Yeah. And let's start leveraging tools like LinkedIn so they can see your voice in a different way. Yeah. And then they're like, really? I have to use LinkedIn? Yes, you have to use LinkedIn. But nothing I teach is really hard. Yeah. It's all human skills. It's just they haven't been taught, or they haven't had a leader that paved the way to show them how it's done. Yeah. So all of that's reinforced through my books and through keynoting, but the one-on-one stuff is where I can really make meaningful change. Yeah. And that's just my approach. But no, we don't have little crying. Well, some cry, but I don't make them cry most of the time. Sometimes, it'll be like an emotional, like, I didn't realize like my impact. That's really cool. Yeah. But no, we don't sit in a room and cry.
Yeah. Rich, how about you?
Well, I'm all about making people cry. Yeah, whatever I can do, like either out of emotion or out of pain. Like I will force you into understanding it. No, okay. And I love what Lindsay said. Like a lot of what it is, it's common sense stuff. Yeah. But we get too busy, we get too focused on the wrong things that we don't carve out the time to, one, take care of ourselves, which is where it all starts.
Yeah.
Right.
But then two, we don't take that dedicated, intentional time to connect with others and to have brainstorming meetings and all these different things. And I will say that I laugh every single time I give a keynote because I'm like, hey, look, I get to professionally stand on stage and remind you to breathe.
Mm.
Like that's ridiculous to me, but it's true. How many times do we not breathe before reacting to a comment or a conversation, or somebody comes in hot at us? We tense up, and just that act of breathing, a couple of seconds of breathing, transforms everything, and it gives you control back.
Yeah.
Now, what I will say is that when I talk with the organizations, because they'll reach out to me and say, hey, we have a conference, or we have an event, we have a leadership retreat, and we want you to come talk. What are your goals? Well, we want to enhance our numbers. We want to have better communication. We're having some struggle with retention. I'm like, great, let's talk about emotional intelligence. And they're like, what?
Right.
Yeah, emotional intelligence is literally the glue that bonds all these things together. It is the universal like power surge protector that you can plug anything in it, it'll work better and more safely. And then also, by the way, if you'd like to have fun during this session, I bring in music and play music from the stage, and I use songs and different sound samples to reinforce the messages. And again, because I'm a cartoon character and a data nerd combined into one, the fact that you can enhance the learning experience through having fun with music and with other things that I do in the presentations, you actually learn and retain the information at a 42% higher level. So when I tell them, like, look, your people will be better, your leaders will be stronger, your teams will be more innovative, you're going to have more creativity, and oh, by the way, your culture is going to go through the roof as far as the impressionability of it, and we're also going to have fun. They're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What was that last word? Fun?
Is that allowed?
We're not going to color or anything. Like, no, we're going to have fun. People are going to enjoy what they're doing, but it's going to stick and it's going to resonate for years to come.
Yeah.
Well, you said something, Rich, and I'd love to kind of dig a little deeper on that, if that's okay. And that was self-care. And this is a concept that I think leaders are starting to get wise to, but you have to model the behavior you want to see. And look, I've had leaders stand on conference room tables, jump up and down, swear at people, throw things across the room. I will tell you, that was not inspiring. And all it made me do was want to go in the opposite direction. So think about what you want for yourself, because they are watching. So if you are the person that says, I haven't taken a vacation in 2 years, or like, I'm working all hours, I'm the first person to respond, or I work on weekends and I'm just going to send you a bunch of emails, like, that's not cool. That's not cool for your people. They need space. They need a break. And if you have one of those unlimited PTO policies, you better take your PTO.
Yeah.
You really should.
Yeah.
And you got to be okay with it when your people say, I need time off.
You set the tone. Yeah. One of the things I find fascinating about this work is just kind of people's ability or familiarity to work with some of this stuff. So I'll do an exercise where I'll take a team and we'll talk about financial metrics, and they'll come up with dozens and dozens of financial metrics and analysis and terms and these really intricate ways of kind of looking at performance and stuff like that. And then I'll talk about, okay, well, how do you feel about this situation? Right. And they'll come up with like 4 words. Right. And then I'll give them an emotions wheel, right? Like I'll give them a tool to be able to say, okay, look, there's like 200 different emotions here on this wheel. Like, and they start looking like, oh yeah, I'm feeling anxious. Oh, but wait, what is this anxiety? Like, is there's some excitement in there? Like they start unpacking the actual emotions, and you realize they just don't have the tools, language, or the perception of being able to actually get into this stuff. And when you get into it, it starts to unlock these things, and they start kind of figuring out, okay, yeah, then why? Like, why am I having this feeling? Why am I excited about this thing? Okay, now you can start communicating. It's like going from black and white to color in many of these groups. What are you noticing? What are some of the things that you have kind of trained, or, tools that you give people to kind of start to develop some of this emotional intelligence kind of strategies or capabilities?
Rich, why don't you go?
Yeah, I think that I love what you're saying too, and I refer to it as the primary colors of emotions. It's almost like that 3 crayon thing that you get at a restaurant. Like, those are the ones we tend to go to. But I love the emotions wheel use. That's huge, because it's like giving somebody going from the 3 crayons to like the 64 pack, which was like golden in the day. But understanding that, like, every day you've got time, because your calendar is up to you. You have time to say, I need 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes during lunch just to sit in what's going on, identifying the triggers that have put me in the mood that I am now, and identifying the emotion. And my favorite question to ask people is, when you do that, is that your favorite version of yourself? And if not, what would you do differently the next time something like this comes up? How would you react differently? What are you going to do with that emotion? Are you going to harbor it and say, I'll deal with that later? Or are you going to take 2 minutes to walk the hall or go get a drink of water and calm down a little bit? So it's that time. Again, I will keep saying the idea of we just have to pause and we have to take the time for ourselves. And Lindsay, like you said, self-care is so critical.
Yeah.
And it's just 5 minutes. You know, a lot of people will say, well, self-care sounds like a spa trip. Like, yeah, that would be great.
It can
Especially
be.
right for my birthday. Like, I'm going to go to the spa for my birthday, and that's self-care. Yes. But taking 5 minutes to say, how am I doing? What is going on today? Where is my energy level at? And what is the best favorite version of myself that I can be moving forward today? That's self-care right there. And in a matter of seconds, you've changed the dynamic. So just putting those small activities, because that change doesn't have to be a major overhaul immediately overnight. It could be the little thing you do, that 5 minutes over lunch to say, how am I doing? What's going on? What I do differently? Yeah. Doing that every day is a quick win that you can reinforce the idea that you are taking your control into your hands, your emotions into your hands, your success and your happiness into your hands. Because most times we're like, somebody made me mad. No, they didn't. You reacted in a way that made you upset with what their actions were.
Yeah. I have two tools that I love to leave leaders with. I have lots, but these are two of my favorites. One is every leader should be asking this humbling question, and that is, how can I be the best leader for you? And when you ask that question, you're going to get a myriad of different answers from everybody you ask based on age, tenure, experience, goals, whatever. But by asking that question, you're doing a couple of things. One, you're admitting you don't know everything. And guess what? Nobody does. And two, you're listening and you're hopefully filing away what that person says. And you're going to find out things that you didn't know before, but you're also building trust. And trust is your currency. So that is what is the foundation of really solid culture. And when you have to deliver those really tough messages, you've already built trust. So you already are in a position where you can experience candor and you can give feedback that isn't threatening and doesn't make people run. And don't forget, when someone says, how's your job? Their answer is, I'm going to tell you about my boss. That's how they feel. Yeah. But the other thing I love to do is it's all about celebrating. And what I mean by that is who on your team is doing anything good, and give them their flowers. Talk about them in front of other people. Talk about them to other leaders. Talk about them on team calls, all hands calls, whatever. And if you have a team call and you say, hey, Rich just did something with our client, Rich, tell the story of how you got into that client, because we haven't been able to get into there in 2 years. So this was different. Rich, share. Now, that looks good on me, because I'm giving him a moment to shine. So all those leaders that think, if I give all the props to someone else, it's going to not make me look like a good leader. No, they're your people. They reflect on you. So that's so important. So celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. Always lift people up. That is such an easy way for you to create and foster really good atmosphere, environment, EQ, all of that's good. And what happens too? It cascades. They do it to each other. And that's a really good vibe.
No, I had to add a quick funny story on top of that. So I live by this philosophy of the platinum rule instead of the golden rule, because the golden rule is treat other people as how you want to be treated. The platinum is treat people how they want to be treated. And I love what you said, Lindsay. The more you invest and get to know your team, the better. I will say I learned the hard way about the celebration in the platinum rule, where I had a team member of mine who did a phenomenal job. And I celebrated her in front of the entire team and made a big deal of it or whatever. She was a rabid introvert. So she stuck through it. Classic. God love her. She stuck through it. And here I am and I am beyond animated, if you can't tell by the background and my disposition generally. So I'm like, this is great. And then I'm freaking out. And she came in my office later on and she goes, I really appreciate what you did. Don't ever do that again. And she did. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. What happened? She goes, I hate having the spotlight on. Yeah. And so she said, if you want to recognize me from now on, like I don't need it, but if you want to do it, drop me a coffee gift card on my desk, drop me a thank you note, do that. But it helped me learn in real time. That was a huge mistake as a leader, because I thought everybody wanted to be celebrated like I like to be celebrated. But when I found that out, I didn't go ask the rest of my team members, like, how would you like to be celebrated? And how would you like to be celebrated?
That's a great question in your one-on-ones. Like, how do you like to be recognized? Some people are like, I want cold hard cash. Other people are like, no, I want my name in lights at the next all hands company meeting.
Right.
You know,
I use Dan Pink's autonomy, mastery, purpose kind of motivation factors, right? And I try to, understand from people, and it's sometimes through a series of conversations, like what's really going to motivate them. And sometimes it's autonomy. Like, I want to control over my environment. Like, I want to be able to determine my work hours or how I do things, what tools I use, or I want to get really good at something. I want to be an amazing public speaker, or I want to be connected to some kind of purpose. And that gives me a little bit of a roadmap for them in terms of, okay, these are the kind of opportunities, the kind of incentives, the kind of, validation and rewards I should be giving them should tie into that stuff. Because if someone's really interested in autonomy and all I'm doing is connecting to purpose, it's going to fall flat, right? It's not going to connect with their underlying intrinsic motivation. But you got to ask, you got to talk to these people, and you got to understand that not the way you see things isn't always the way everyone else sees things, and you've got to flex.
One of the power skills that goes beautifully with that, Bruce, is delegation. And people think quickly, oh, delegation is just getting stuff off my plate. Well, yes, maybe, but you're also giving people an opportunity to shine. Yeah. So if somebody says, Bruce, I love analytics. If you ever have any analytics projects, put me in. Like, I would love to do that. Okay, here's your chance. I've got this project and I've got your back. And if you fall down, that's on me because it's my project, but I want you to lead it.
Yep.
Great for them to learn.
I want to get into this kind of, we touched on it a little bit in the beginning, kind of being vulnerable in these cases, because I think that's one of the big challenges. And I always love Brene Brown's quote on this is vulnerability or vulnerability is weakness in me and admiration or strength in somebody else, right? Like, I always, when I see someone being vulnerable, I say, wow, that's powerful. That I connect with that. But as an individual, you're always like, oh, that's going to come across as weakness. How do you help leaders with this kind of topic of vulnerability and figuring out, okay, where do I be vulnerable? How do I be vulnerable? What's the right way in which to present that in context that's going to be helpful and meaningful versus things that are going to come across as maybe not land as well, or being self-serving rather than trying to build connection in a team?
I love this question.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something I teach because I teach people how to tell their story. And when we do this, we often take the worst thing that's ever happened to them and use that as part of their story, because everyone's not that interested in the car crash. They're interested in the rise out of that horrible moment. Yeah. And so, when I tell my story, I'm always like, I spent 23 years at IBM, hugely decorated career. It was fantastic. I was sought out by another company. They brought me over to lead a sales team for them. And in 6 months, they fired me. Yeah. And I was gutted. I was devastated. And for a month, I didn't know what I was doing. And after that, I asked myself 3 questions. What am I really good at? What do I love to do? And how can I help people the most? And from that moment, I built this next chapter of my career. I wrote a couple books. I have an award-winning podcast. I coach executives. Like, I do all these things that I love that I never would have had the opportunity to do if I wasn't shoved out of the nest. So when people hear the story, are they sticking to she got fired and she sucks? Or are they more excited about all the cool stuff that I've done since? Yeah. And so it's that kind of roller coaster moment. And that's what people are really intrigued and inspired by. So being vulnerable isn't standing naked out in a field and being like, okay, I'm here. I mean, it's much more of like, I had it rough too, guys. And let me show you how, but let me show you what I was capable of. And you are too.
Yeah.
So that's the way I like to look at it.
I'm imperfect, just like everyone else.
Yeah.
Rich,
thank God the field isn't the determinant, because I'd be in a lot of trouble. But a couple different things. One, I just spoke at and coached a CEO at their company event, and they went through a big transformation, and actually, frankly, a pretty rocky time. And he was getting up there, and it was really a message of, we've turned the corner, we're really moving forward. And he wanted to, he's very, like, he's one of those people that you just picture to be, or assume to be by looking at him, that he's just a perfectionist. He's really good at what he does. He's always successful. Just that aura, that gravitas. Yeah. And he shared with me privately, like, he was like, there were times where I was terrified we were going to go bankrupt. And that I was going to have to let all these people go that had believed in me and believed in my vision. And so we were talking through his speech, and I said, look, not only the tonality, but the wording that you're choosing here, lay your guard down even more. Yeah. Because there's also that moment too, where you can say, well, I'm being vulnerable, but I'm trying to be motivational. No, be vulnerable in the moment and let that be what it is, and let it breathe. Yeah. And he crushed. And I will say, it wasn't because of me. That's not the point. The point is that I let him, or gave him permission to give himself permission to be vulnerable in that moment authentically. Yeah. And I think that in of itself transforms an organization. And I think so. There's that. I agree with Lindsay. It's the rise out and then what's next kind of thing. But also it's that consistent vulnerability as well. And I will share as well. So one thing that I've never shared publicly and one thing that I will share publicly, or that I do often. One is that in my presentations, I talk about empathy and how we should all just be kind to each other, just because it's the right thing to do. But also we're all carrying around something. And I ask the audience, and I don't ever actually expect a response, but I say, what is, are you all carrying around something that nobody else knows about? Something that's weighing on you every single day? And I share that every time my dad calls and I see it pop up on caller ID, I let it go to voicemail because I think he's calling to tell me that my mom's dead. Because she's been in hospice for a couple of years. So that's my vulnerable moment that I carry every single day. But it also breaks open the audience to say, oh my gosh, this guy up here in the bright colored jacket playing, hip hop hooray at some point is actually a human too. Yeah, absolutely. I struggle through those things as well. But I will also say too, and Lindsay, I love that you shared the story about, your firing. I secretly wear a pair of socks because I was Mr. Socks at a previous job because I have a very outlandish, shocking sock collection. So I wear this pair of socks that my boss, the first boss that ever fired me, gave me. And it's my motivation to think I wouldn't be standing on this stage in front of 2,000 people, getting them empowered and doing the YMCA if I hadn't been fired. I'd be sitting in another cubicle or in another office somewhere doing a job that I didn't like. And here I am doing what I'm doing. So I actually wear it in homage and appreciation of her firing me. And so it's my vulnerability point where I could have said the same thing. Like, I guess I'll just go find something else to go do. I guess I'll just, but it allows us to kind of have that vulnerable moment. And I love the way you put it, Lindsay, of okay, what am I going to do now? Because I could sit and feel sorry for myself, or
I did.
I mean, I think candidly, I have done that as well. Like I will say that I had my fair share of bourbon and ice cream maybe in order, or also at the same time to get through that. But at the same time, it helped me be a stronger individual. It helped me become more laser focused on why the hell I'm here on this earth.
There's an interesting one in there too, because and I basically started my company. I got laid off and I didn't know what to do, and I was like, struggling for 6 months and figuring out, how do I make my money? How do I make my rent? And so, but I think there's something interesting in that kind of whole in those experiences and telling those experiences is actually being okay with the struggle, right? Or being okay with that kind of period. Because I think just culturally, we chase happiness all the time. We chase kind of satisfaction and things like that. And I think there's an element of when you're able to talk about that down part, that kind of struggle element, and not as something that you're trying to run away from all the time, but as a key part of the human experience. I think that really connects with people. And I think that, in that kind of vulnerability is that ability to actually talk about that and sit with that without it being something I need to kind of run away from or something I need to quickly cover.
And you can survive discomfort. Anyone can. And, Rich will tell you, all three of us, we've all had to get really comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's just kind of my normal state these days, because I'm totally inspired and excited about the next, the new, the what could I do that I've never done before. And that I stayed in my corporate role. And I'm not saying everybody leave your corporate role. That is not the message. It can be extremely rewarding. If you're with the right teams and the right leaders, and it's fantastic. It's opened up a world for me that I never thought possible. I never planned on being an author, never planned on doing a podcast, never planned on, keynote speaking, although I always wanted to. Like, that all just came because I was open and I was really comfortable getting uncomfortable.
Really. Rich, in our prep call, we talked a little bit about being uncomfortable strategically. You were talking about some of the work you've done in improv. Can you tell us a little bit of that story in terms of what that taught you about how to deal with those situations?
Yeah, and we did talk about the idea that one, my favorite and probably the highest ROI investment I've made in myself professionally is taking an improv class. And I took 6 weeks of improv training in Minneapolis, the Brave New Workshop, shouting them out. If you're listening to this and when you're watching this, go look up an improv troupe in your city, because they're everywhere. And most of them, I would venture to say almost all of them offer some sort of like a corporate training or personal training kind of a situation, because it helps their business model, number one. but it sets people free. And I will say that going through those classes allowed me to think on my feet better, allowed me to react in a different way to people that I literally had zero communication with or zero in common with. But it helped me be more open and agile in conversation all the time. And so I use it in sales. I use it in team meetings. I use it in proposals. I use it in keynotes. I use it in coaching. I use it with my kids. Like it is literally like a fiber of me now. And so if you can do that and you can be able to be agile on your feet, both mentally, emotionally, and sometimes physically, but understanding that you have to have the ability to pivot in the real time to adjust to the situation. If you think you're just going to barrel through every single wall that comes through your way, you're sorely mistaken. The more adaptable and the more pivotal, the more agile you can be in conversation and in communication, the better off you're going to be. So I will say, if you are currently investing in professional development, put improv training on your list now. It has to be done.
Wholeheartedly agree. And if you are in sales, it is the perfect thing to do.
Well, it helps you connect, right? Like you have to be aware, you have to connect with the folks, and you have to build, right? Like
you have to listen.
Fundamental EQ.
Yes. It's a big part of it.
So we're going to hit time here. I'm sure we could go on for another couple of hours on these, but I want to make sure that people have contact information. Lindsay, if people want to get a hold of you, learn about what you're doing, what's the best way to get that?
Definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. But if you go to my website, heartbeatforhire.com, all my socials are there. Please check out the podcast. It's on YouTube and wherever you find your favorite show.
Perfect. And Rich, how do people get a hold of you?
They can find me at richbracken.com. Everything you need to know about me, content, videos, all kinds of stuff. I've got a bunch of new content coming soon. So everything's at richbracken.com.
Awesome. Cool. If anyone wants to get a hold of me, just bruce@eckfeldt.com is the email, eckfeldt.com URL, and LinkedIn, obviously. Lindsay, Rich, thank you so much for taking the time today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Bruce.
And thank you for everyone listening. Again, if you're watching the replay, go ahead and leave comments, questions there. We'll watch those in the coming days and week. And thank you for joining us. Thanks, everyone.